Good morning, everyone. This is Brooke Rouse from the St. Lawrence County Chamber. Thank you so much for joining us for our digital marketing series, session 2. We're excited to have the Watertown Daily Times media team with us again, focused on streaming TV today. Just a few little notes. If you can find your chat box, and if you have any questions throughout the presentation, feel free to chat them in there. There's no question too silly or small. We'll have pause time to check on those questions and plenty of Q&A at the end. So this is a great opportunity to get your questions answered. And we do recognize that this is all very new information for a lot of us. So don't hesitate at all asking questions. This is the opportunity for us to really learn and understand these tools with the professionals on the call. So with that, I'll also mention that this is a great partnership of chambers of commerce across the North Country, bringing this resource to our members. And we're so glad that many of you have joined us, and will appreciate the recordings as well that we will get out shortly. So with that, I will pass it over to Rudy Clark to get the presentation going. Thanks, Rudy.
Thanks, Brooke. I just want to say hello and thank you to all the chambers who have sponsored us. And thank you for everybody who's attending today. I'm Rudy Clark from the Watertown Daily Times. It's a one-stop shop in all your paper and digital advertising. Today, we're going to be going over, streaming television. Streaming television is actually one of our most popular digital advertising pieces, because with streaming television, you get to create your own commercial at an affordable price, and the advertising can actually extend into Canada, or if you have multiple businesses across anywhere in the U.S., we can put GeoNets over top of each one of your businesses. So like say, for instance, you have one location in Watertown, another location in Plattsburgh. Instead of advertising everywhere in between, we could put, say, for instance, a 5-mile GeoNet over top of each. So that way you're targeting the audience that you want to, instead of wasting your marketing dollars in areas that you're not interested in. Today we're going to have one of our back office support team members giving the presentation. He deals with this every day. He knows it inside and out. His name is Chris. And also one other thing I like to highlight as well, we have all the approvals that's needed if you want to do a commercial in case you had a cannabis related business as well. I know that's up and coming, especially in the Hogansburg area and all throughout in New York. So it was essentially at this point, you guys could be, if you had a cannabis business, you could be the first to advertise on the streaming television platform, which is widely used in upstate New York, especially the North Country. I mean, on average, if I remember right, our completion ratings for the commercial for large screen usually run over 90%. So it's definitely a great way to get your message out and get the word out. So with that, I'm going to have Chris take it from here. He's going to go into more detail. And if you have any questions, like Brooke said, please don't hesitate. You could put them in the chat. You could ask, out loud right now, or if you wanted to, you could email me afterwards, and I'd be happy to work with you on whatever question you have. All right. Thanks, Chris. It's all yours.
Thanks, Rudy. And thank you very much, Brooke. We really appreciate you guys having us on today. So as Rudy mentioned, our goal today is to talk about streaming TV. One of the reasons that I love this product is that it's simple. It's not hard to understand. It's easy to run. Obviously, you do have to have the right assets, that being video assets, in place in order to utilize it. But for the most part, there's a low barrier for entry, and it's a really great product that encapsulates multiple pieces within the sales funnel. And I'll go through that in greater detail here in a little bit. But we do want to make sure that we focus on streaming TV as more of a branding product. And I'll explain that here in a little bit more detail. So just want to touch on our agenda today. Obviously, we want to start from the beginning. We want to talk about what streaming TV is. We want to talk about where it falls within that buying journey or that sales funnel. And then we also want to figure out the best ways to use streaming TV, the different options that we have, the inventory sources, which may be new a new conversation for you, but it's something that comes up a lot when we talk about streaming TV. People want to know where this ad is going to run. They want to know what platforms it'll be on and the other inventory sources that are out there. And I'll make sure to cover that in great detail today. We will talk about reporting as well. We'll talk about what sets us apart from some competitors in the market. Again, it's going to go right back into that inventory source and those platforms. And then we're also going to go through some case studies. What are some examples of ways that we've utilized this in the past that have been effective? And that's really what's going to be important when it comes to any products that we run within the digital space. How can we make it as effective as possible? And I will tell you that streaming TV is one of those products, and we are seeing the growth of streaming TV just explode across the board, both in the United States and in Canada, as Rudy mentioned as well. So a lot of different targeting strategies that we'll have, a lot of different areas that we can target, and everything that Rudy mentioned about geo-targeting is absolutely applicable here. Well, let me jump ahead and we'll talk about what streaming TV is. So think about streaming TV as anything that's going to run on a smart TV. So any internet-enabled television, anything that would run through a puck, stick, or dongle, like a Amazon Fire Stick, a Chromecast, a Roku stick. All that's going to be applicable within your smart TV as well, except you don't have to have that stick or dongle. It would just be programmed into that television. For example, I have a Samsung TV at home, and probably an example that I'll bring up a couple times today. Gaming consoles such as Xbox and PlayStations also have streaming capabilities. And then the one thing that we definitely want to make sure that we cover in depth so everybody has a full understanding of it is how we would utilize laptops, tablets, and mobile devices in these streaming packages. That is something that we cannot discount here. Those small screen devices are going to be critically important to running a streaming TV campaign, because we see these days that there's close to a 50-50 split between people streaming on large screen devices and on small screen devices. So we'll kind of go through that breakdown in much more detail as well. The main goal of any streaming TV campaign from our perspective is to make sure that your commercial can be served across every single one of the devices that I just mentioned. I always use the example that I have a 5-year-old daughter who kind of runs the household, and many times I'll be watching something on the large screen in my living room, and I quickly get ejected from the living room and have to watch it on my tablet or on my laptop or my small screen device. If you have children like mine, you'll know that having to move on to those small screen devices is going to be critically important and something that's a requirement in a household every once in a while. Let's talk about where streaming TV falls in the buying journal, or what we refer to as the sales funnel. This is how we drive people to purchase a product or service utilizing digital advertising. Streaming TV is going to be more of a top of the funnel product. It falls in line with a regular display campaign or a video campaign as well. So we want to make sure that we utilize it to the best of its abilities. Just because it is a branding and awareness tool doesn't mean that it cannot help drive people down through that sales funnel. The ultimate goal here is going to be that conversion or that purchase or a reservation. Whatever that conversion is to you, that's really what we're trying to accomplish here. So I love streaming TV. I typically would recommend incorporating it into a product mix with another set of products, something like maybe paid search, or something that helps drive those conversions a little bit more. But we always want to start at that top of the funnel. We want to fill that funnel, and then we want to drive people down through it. Our typical recommendation when it comes to streaming TV is going to be to use a split of 60% large screen devices or inventory and 40% small screen devices or inventory. Again, I'm going to go through that in a little bit more detail, but we always want to make sure that we're incorporating a combination of both large and small screen devices. One of the things that you need to understand when we talk about streaming TV is the absolute incredible growth that we've seen over the last years. You'll see that this graph shows the daily distribution of time spent using traditional TV and streaming TV among adults in the United States. Now, obviously, we have a big sample size here between Q3 of 2018 and Q3 of 2022. And you will see that the percentage of people utilizing streaming TV is increasing incredibly. And to be honest with you, when we look at the rates from 2022 to 2023, that gap is only getting larger. People are moving a little bit away from traditional TV. I'm not saying that it shouldn't be part of your overall marketing strategy, but I do think that people are moving more heavily into the streaming TV space. So it's certainly something that we offer, and certainly something that we want to make sure that we're educating people on. These are some statistics that we like to talk about when we dive into streaming TV. 40% of users who pause content or will pause content to learn more, meaning somebody could be watching a show on, let's say Hulu, and they're, in the middle of their show, if it's an unpaid subscription, they will see those commercials. If they pause that show, many times they will pause that show to do research on a commercial that they've seen. So it could be for a restaurant chain in their area. It could be for an auto mechanic. It could be for a plumber. It could be for a home services company. Many times people will pause their show to do more research on their small screen devices. So they'll move to their cell phone and they'll do the research necessary to look up that particular product or service. 79% of marketers say that live video facilitates a more authentic interaction with their audience. As somebody who does this on a daily basis, I can absolutely attest to that and say that we are seeing the growth of streaming TV skyrocket. And it's certainly something that we almost always recommend that you include into your product mix on for a digital marketing strategy. 60% of viewers who conduct research online while they're looking at that streaming TV, or while they're watching that streaming TV program. So obviously people will stop what they're doing. They will dive in, they will research more. So we want to make sure that we're utilizing effective video campaigns and streaming TV campaigns to get in front of them. And we'll share this deck too, so that you have these statistics, but there's a lot of information that you can look up about streaming TV as well that goes above and beyond what you're seeing here. I will say, typically we see that the age group between 18 and 34 are watching more streaming TV than other groups. However, we are seeing everybody outside of that millennial demographic increase their streaming TV intake quite a lot across the board. So certainly something that you should consider when you're looking at streaming TV. The benefits of streaming TV. So again, we're typically going to recommend that 60-40 split, that we find that to kind of be the sweet spot. What we really like about that is that it offers a great mix of branding and awareness and customer engagement. I talked about that sales funnel earlier. By utilizing that 60-40 split, we're not only filling that branding and awareness portion of the funnel, but we're also allowing people to click utilizing those small screen devices. So when you think about it logistically, if you're streaming a show on Hulu, again, you will not be able to click on that ad utilizing your smart TV. But if you are streaming it on your mobile device, you will be able to click onto it and go to that advertiser's website and purchase a product or make a reservation or, book a time slot, something like that, whatever that conversion point is on their website. We also want to make sure that we're able to hone in on your target audience using precise demographic targeting. There's multiple ways that we can utilize streaming TV. We can incorporate demographic targeting or specific behavioral targeting, but for the most part, we find that running some run-of-network campaigns, meaning delivering to anybody and everybody within that space, is effective as well. As I mentioned earlier, millennials are going to be that prime demographic. However, we're seeing growth in every other demographic set in terms of their consumption of streaming TV. So absolutely something that we want to focus on. As Rudy mentioned, we can run this for cannabis-focused campaigns. So streaming TV is an option if you're a cannabis business. Certainly something that you can reach out to Rudy about for more information there, but absolutely something that we can answer any questions on towards the end if you have them. With streaming TV, there is a pretty low barrier to entry. We're typically going to recommend a minimum of 20,000 impressions per month. And that would really just depend on the geographic area that we're targeting as well. So if you're targeting all of New York, that's probably going to be a much bigger requirement in terms of our impression count. But if you're targeting a couple of zip codes, like Rudy mentioned, or you're doing a 5-mile radius around a zip code, we certainly want to make sure that it's effective utilizing that number of impressions. We are always going to be working within a brand safe environment. We want to make sure that we are avoiding any and all bot traffic. And then we also want to make sure that we're providing you with impactful and robust reporting, which is something that you will get from us regularly, something that you will always have access to, and something that you can check on a regular basis. In terms of our large screen inventory, this is something that we get asked a lot of questions about. We do want to make sure that people understand that when we're talking about large screen inventory, this is going to be your Hulu subscription services. Typically, this would not be the $10 a month package. This would be the $5 one that allows for commercial breaks. We do run on Pluto TV, Samsung TV Plus, and then all the other different applications that would be out there, like Fox News, Vizio. Those are going to be other inventory sources that we have access to. And I have a much more in-depth list for you here in just a second. The difference with streaming TV from traditional TV advertising is that you're typically going to see fewer ad breaks. There's going to be higher brand recall because you're going to see more of the commercials that are related to things that you're interested in. This inventory is going to be non-skippable and will generate a much higher completion rate, meaning somebody watched it from start to finish. And then that completion rate is achieved on large screen as long as the viewer doesn't change the channel or turn it off. So the only way that they're really able to skip that ad is if they change the channel, switch applications, or actually turn their device off. In terms of the small screen inventory, it's going to look a little bit different. These viewers tend to be a little bit more engaged with the actual ad set. Streaming ads can play on desktop computers. They can play on laptops, tablets, and mobile devices. You will often see a much higher number of clicks on that particular ad, meaning somebody sees the ad, they click on it, and they go to your website. Whereas you can't do that with the large screen devices I mentioned earlier. So you will see the completion rate, meaning the person watched from start to finish, go down, but the actual interaction with your advertisement and your website will go up. These ads can play during a commercial break, as well as before the actual show or during or after the programming. You will see quite a few more commercial breaks with these small screen devices. And even though on-site conversion shouldn't be a primary metric for streaming TV, you will see them from this small screen inventory. I do like to see some activity here. And again, why we typically look at that 60-40 split. So we see the completion rate maintained at a higher percentage. And then we also see that click-through rate grow as well. In terms of inventory sources and platforms, this is really where we kind of get to the meat of it. And this is really where we tend to get the most questions. Your commercial will be shown on large networks and streaming inventory sources. Think about your A&Es, Fox, CBS, ESPN, all the different applications that are out there. Many of them have streaming inventory that we all have access to. Crackle, Sling TV, Vudo, Fubo. For me, I typically subscribe to Fubo right at the beginning of the NFL season because I'm a cord cutter. So once I have that, then I will start to see the streaming inventory again. We always want to make sure that we're running premium content. We're also working with premium distributors and then regional networks as well. We want to make sure that we're covering all the bases from large national applications down to those local networks as well. In terms of reporting, when it comes to any digital advertising campaign, this is really where you get to the meat and potatoes of how the campaign ran and how effective it was to accomplish your digital advertising goals. We want to make sure that we focus on the completion rate, and then we want to give you an analysis of those top performing channels as well. There's a lot of information in these reports, and there's a lot of different ways that you can sort through it. We want to make sure that we're targeting the right geos effectively. If you're targeting zip codes, we want to make sure that we bid up or down on specific zip codes where it's more important to your business. We want to maintain that high completion rate, but when we're incorporating that small screen inventory as well, we will see a click-through rate. And so we want to make sure that we're able to follow that and optimize towards it as well. Our team is really designed and is paid based on the performance of these campaigns. So they go in on a daily basis, they check the performance. If they're seeing that the completion rate is low, they may recommend that we update the creative. They may recommend that we lean a little bit heavier on that small screen inventory if that's where the performance is coming from. So this is never a set it and forget it campaign. Nothing that we do falls within that category. We want to make sure that we're learning from what we're seeing in these reports and we're making the necessary adjustments. Same thing with small screen devices. We're going to see a higher click-through rates. Typically for a video campaign, we'll see a CTR, somewhere above that 0.33%, but that's not always the case. Sometimes it can be lower, sometimes it can be higher. Again, the goal is to make sure that we're looking at the the performance of the campaign, and we're optimizing towards what is best for your business. We want to make sure that we're always refining the targeting. We're keeping track of the behaviors, or we're keeping track of that geo-targeting that we talked about earlier. We want to make sure that our team is making the proper adjustments in order to make this a successful campaign for everyone. Some of the reasons why I would recommend that you work with us here. Obviously, we've been doing this for quite a long time. Certainly something that I do on a daily basis. We always have a regularly curated block list of undesirable websites and applications. These days, many people take issue with gaming sites. So think about like your Bejeweled or something like that. We have a curated block list that allows us to include or exclude any of those applications that may not be advantageous to your business. However, I will say from a digital perspective, what we want to make sure we're doing is targeting the right people in the right places, wherever that may be. Frequency capping is also going to be a part of the controls that we have in place. We want to make sure that we're not delivering 100 ads to one person in a day. We want to make sure that we are utilizing the number of impressions purchased, and we're delivering those as effectively throughout the course of the campaign. Day parting is also something that we take into consideration. We typically do not deliver ads during graveyard hours. That would be 12 a.m. to 5 a.m. However, if that is an advantageous time to your business, then certainly let us know. And that's absolutely something that we can do if we need to. The majority of streaming impressions, however, will be delivered during the early morning or the evening hours, as that's when we find that most people are online and they're watching streaming devices. We do want to make sure that we're making those frequent audience optimizations as well. That's really important. So we want to, again, watch what we're seeing in reporting and optimize towards it. So one of the case studies that we wanted to bring up today is we worked with a hotel. We did a very short run for them, which is not irregular when it comes to streaming TV. This was a three-week campaign, but the client was hoping to increase branding and awareness, and then obviously boost room bookings. So that was really, really important. This was during the college sports season, so something that was important. We recommended the 60-40 split using a level of behavioral and demographic targeting. We were looking at college-bound students and their families. And then we saw from the delivery of these campaigns, we saw a 15% increase in room bookings following the campaign. And we showed a 92.46 completion rate on that. Again, completion rate is an important percentage that we look at. However, it's not the end all be all. We want to take that. We want to look at click-through rate. We want to look at completion rate. We want to make sure that this is the most effective statistics that we're looking at based on the goals of your campaign. And that is really what I have for you today. I'll turn it back over to Rudy, and I think we'll open it up for Q&A here in a moment.
Thanks, Chris. Yes, definitely. Our reporting is very detailed and very precise. Actually, I do have a couple clients that utilize this reporting because in the reporting itself, I don't know, Chris or Nancy, if we have a sample reporting of one of the customers up here handy or not, but with the reporting, it's very, very detailed. It's a zip code and town specific. It'll show you how many clicks. It'll also show you the percentage of the commercial that an average consumer watched, whether it was 25, 50, 75%, or 100%. It gets very zeroed in per se. And, it's easier that way to see where your audience is. So if you want to target other types of advertising as well, you know where your target market is, and it kind of sets the tone for where you're going to get the highest return on your marketing ROI. So right here is one of the a sample of the reporting, but the actual report itself is, oh my God, what is it, like 6-7 pages long?
Yeah, absolutely, Rudy. Yeah, they're going to be pretty in depth, and they'll go from everything from your impression delivery, your clicks, your click-through rate, your completion rate, all the way down to a refined zip code list based on the geographic targeting. So even if we're targeting an entire city, you'll still see the city breakdown as well as the zip code breakdown also. Sorry to interrupt you.
No worries, no worries. Yeah, so like I said, it is very, very effective reporting, and this is a very effective product that the majority of my customers like to utilize, especially in the North Country. Up there, it seems for some reason as if in the North Country, and don't hold me to this quote, but it just seems like in the North Country, people utilize streaming TV more so than cable, because with the results that we've been getting, they've been phenomenal, over the top, more so than what the national average is, and comparable to like a large city as well. So that's pretty much all that I have to say. Chris, did you have anything else you like to add?
No. I mean, I think that the amount of cord cutters, we use terms like cord cutters, meaning somebody who used to have a cable subscription or broadcast TV, and now they're utilizing streaming TV devices almost exclusively. We're seeing that number increase quite a lot. We're also seeing cord, what we would refer to as cord shavers. So people who still maintain their cable subscriptions, but they also then still utilize a lot of different streaming services while they're out there. So we're seeing a really mixed bag. Again, I wholeheartedly believe that we're going to start to see the amount of people that are streaming exclusive is going to increase thoroughly. So absolutely a great way to get in front of your audience utilizing this particular product.
And then finally, too, not that it gets lost in the mix, but this is a great product to use if you're interested in advertising in Canada, and especially for tourism. It's definitely one product that you want to look into with any type of digital advertising marketing campaign you may have. So with that, I guess Brooke will take it to the questions.
Yep, sounds great. And again, I'll encourage everyone to find that chat box on their screen, and feel free to type in the questions. I'll moderate them here, and we'll learn a lot through this session as well. So we had a question just on a definition. When you're talking about streaming TV, how do you define an impression? Is it each time that the commercial appears?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, it would be every time the commercial appears. And that's also why we track completion rate, because we want to make sure that we are showing a commercial where people can see it from start to finish. So that's why we report on the completion rate. It's also one of the reasons why I would almost always recommend that you provide a 15-second and a 30-second ad. That way we can have access to more inventory sources, and we will continue to maintain a higher completion rate with both of those ad sizes, or
Great.
lengths, I should say, ad lengths, I should say.
And I think for those who this is still a new concept too, if you think about times you've been on your phone or your tablet or your computer and you skip an ad that's a video ad, or you watch it all, that's what we're talking about here, those videos that kind of interrupt whatever you're trying to watch, and spark some new interest for something you maybe didn't know about.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, as I mentioned in the presentation, that's the large screen inventory is typically going to be non-skippable, whereas the small screen inventory, you'll have more access to skip that inventory. So again, why we want to track both completion rate and clicks and conversions from these campaigns.
Great. And do you advise on the kind of how the content is put together? I'm just thinking now we do streaming TV for tourism in St. Lawrence County, and I'm just thinking as we go through this that having those calls to action perhaps towards the front of the video, or calls to a website, something like that. Usually we put at the end, but perhaps they should be in the front as well in case they only watch 5 seconds of it. Is that something that you have a magic design to, or something you can recommend to clients?
Unfortunately, I don't think there's a one size fits all solution to all digital campaigns. But yeah, I think that it would be a good idea to have your call to action throughout the course of the commercial. If you can have it up front, that's probably better, especially if it's on the small screen inventory. That way we can make sure that we're getting that out there and we're driving people to click to your website. Whereas with the large screen device, it's a little bit more about that completion rate. So I think there's a sweet spot with both. And I think that if you can do it up front and then maintain it through both ad lengths, that's probably the most effective way to do it.
Great. Thank you so much.
Okay.
A few more questions in the chat box, and keep them coming, please. If you feel more comfortable unmuting and asking a question, I'll offer that in a minute as well. So we had a question, if you can explain the GeoNet more specifically and how that works.
Yeah, so we're going to be targeting very specifically when it comes to geography. For streaming TV, if we want to look at that 5-mile radius that Rudy mentioned, what we would do is pick a zip code or pick your address, and then we can draw a 5-mile radius around it and deliver ads in that particular area. Sometimes that's really effective, kind of depending on your business. You know, for service area businesses, something like that, that's actually really effective, because if you only have a 5-10-mile radius that you do business in, then we certainly want to make sure that we stay within it. We can target anywhere in the US or Canada, so targeting Syracuse or Utica is certainly not a problem. So no issues there. And we have multiple different products that are going to allow us to target much more specifically in certain instances. So for example, we do have what's called device ID targeting that would actually allow us to pull devices from, you know, down to like 100-meter radius. So that's a bit of a different product set, and probably a conversation for another day, but certainly something that we can do. And so, you know, depending on how big or small you want that area to be, we can absolutely, usually, well, I shouldn't say absolutely, we can always work with you to find the right geographic area to target and can do it effectively.
Yeah, and I would just say I had conversations recently with some partners here in St. Lawrence County about I think it's creepy cool marketing, as I call it, to really geo-target who you want to reach. So a lot of our campaigns, we're looking at the western side of Ontario, Ottawa, and so the neighborhoods there to get them to come down here. But I was talking to someone who holds a Scottish festival, and if they are seeing trends in their event and pockets of Scottish ancestry that are coming to their events, they could specifically drive that messaging to those Scottish communities in Ottawa and New York and Syracuse. And I was talking to the Historical Association about kind of Canadian migration to the North Country and trying to really target where some of those families came from and potentially draw some connections there. So you can get pretty specific if you know some trends, or you can be broad, and that data kind of gives you more information to hone into on a future campaign. So I think it's fascinating. Just a follow-up question. For GeoNet, can you do that targeting competitors' address?
Yes. So the product that you're referring to is what we call device ID targeting. Now, I will preface this by saying that does not apply to streaming TV. Streaming TV, the most narrow targeting that we can get down to geographically is going to be at that zip code level, and that's how we would draw that radius. But when we talk about device ID targeting, yes, we can absolutely pull all of your competitors' addresses. We can draw a polygon around each one of those locations and pull every device that's been there in the past year and deliver display ads to them. We can also deliver video pre-roll ads to them. So there is some video products that we can utilize for that particular product. Streaming TV, that is not applicable to streaming TV. But again, I typically don't put together proposals or campaigns that incorporate just one product. We usually want to do a mix of products that would help us encapsulate the entire sales funnel. So we're filling that sales funnel and we're driving people to convert. So that is absolutely something that we can incorporate in a more holistic digital advertising plan for you.
And also digital TV, device ID is one of the webinars that we're going to be going over, I think 3 sessions down the line. So we're going to definitely get involved or into that in depth. So that way everyone has a better understanding how each campaign or each webinar that we're offering different fundamentals of digital advertising, how they all tie together. And it just depends on your area, your target focus, whether you're using Google Analytics, because there's a lot to digital advertising, but each piece has its own focal point to what you're trying to get to. just like in the funnel that Chris was showing earlier. Also, too, if anybody's wondering how the commercial evolves, at Watertown Daily Times, we can actually create some commercials for you. There's also some local companies as well that could help you create a commercial as well. So after we're done, I'll email you everybody a copy of some commercials that we've done, and also I'll attach the abbreviations list as well. So that way, if you have any questions about the abbreviations or terminology we went over, you can refer to it to help you better understand.
Great. There was one other question. What about Hulu or any of the major platforms, not versus the individual station streaming?
So I think I understand the question. Are you asking? I think you're asking if we have access to that inventory, and we absolutely do through Hulu. We have access to local stations as well as other applications like ESPN, ABC. The reality is that we have access to almost any streaming TV inventory source out there. For people that are familiar with the digital advertising world, Sinclair and Tegna are going to be two huge inventory sources that we will have access to. But everything from Hulu and anything that allows for commercial advertising within their streaming platform, like a Pluto TV or a Vudu, again, we're going to have access to all of it. Now, if you talk about something like Netflix or HBO, they do not currently have commercial sets within their inventory source. So we wouldn't be able to run ads in those areas. Now, Netflix is talking about it. They haven't quite released it yet. But certainly something that I think we'll see more of for all of these different streaming services down the road, so that people can have access to it, but those streaming services are still also making money from it as well.
Great. If anyone has questions that they prefer to unmute, I believe you can unmute yourself and ask your question. Or if anyone else has any final questions, feel free to add those to the chat box. Again, this is a great opportunity to understand things. If you would like something to be clarified, like the questions we just had, now's a great opportunity.
So this last question, can you use your service if a client is based out of your typical subscription area, say in Syracuse or Utica? Absolutely. Do not think about streaming TV like a regular cable service. We can target anybody in the US anywhere they are at any time. That is no problem at all. We do not have subscription services. That is not how streaming TV works at all. We are able to target anyone, anywhere, based off their demographics, their behaviors. So it really does not apply to those areas. We can target Syracuse, Utica, we can target anywhere in the US, and we can target anywhere in Canada as well. We also have access to inventory in other countries, but I will tell you, it's a little bit more of a reconnaissance mission when that comes to it. Canada, US, we do it all the time. We've certainly delivered ads in Mexico and certain areas like that. But once we get a little bit outside the North America, it tends to be a little bit more tricky.
And Chris, you touched on with your case study the behavioral targeting. I know we've talked a lot about zip codes and things like that. I don't know if you can flip to that screen, but I don't know if you can speak to that a little bit more, if that might get the wheels turning for people in other ways of targeting. And again, I always tell people we often have limited budgets, so send the right message to the right person. And I think this is a great tool for that. So just wanted you to chat about that a bit more.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you, one of the reasons why we don't focus on it as heavily when it comes to streaming TV is that many times we want to focus on a larger area when we're talking about delivering through a streaming network. So we want to target all of Syracuse. That's a pretty large area. We want to make sure that we're reaching most people within that area. However, if you are a business that wants to target a much more niche audience, that's absolutely something that we can do. We always joke around here that we can target redheaded left-handed golfers if we need to. So obviously a very small set. The problem with doing that in a small area is that you are going to run out of inventory very quickly. So where we might want to target people between the ages of 18 to 34, that's usually a pretty efficient way to target with streaming TV, because there's going to be enough inventory out there for it. Or if you want to, you're an auto dealer and you want to target people with an interest in Ford Focuses or Ford owners, that's absolutely something that we can do. Typically with our display advertising, we're going to have a pretty unlimited inventory source because there's tons of websites and we have tons of areas where we can deliver. With streaming TV, it has to go through these streaming services and networks, so that tends to shrink our inventory source. So absolutely, we can absolutely include audience targeting if we want to, but I would recommend keeping it somewhat generic to start with, and then letting us see how that goes, and then we can refine it further down the road if we need to.
Great. Thank
Just
you.
to add to that, especially like in the North Country, you know, certain towns may only have 10,000 homes. And if you're trying to push out 20,000 commercials within a month, and then you put a behavioral component on there, it's going to shrink down your audience maybe so much to whereas it wouldn't be able to deliver the 20,000 impressions during that time. So they're just, you know, if you do have a behavioral component on there, you definitely want to expand the area and the footprint that you're going to be advertising to.
Absolutely. And again, as I mentioned, why our operations team is going to constantly be looking at the reporting from these campaigns. If they see, excuse me, if they see that targeting, you know, people with a household income of 75K plus a year is choking out the campaign and we can't reach the right amount of inventory, the first thing they're going to do is remove that so that we can get a wider reach out there.
Great. Well, thank you so much. If you want to go to that final slide so people can take your contact information, we really appreciate this partnership. There's so much to learn, and really breaking this down each session into these bite-sized pieces helps a lot. So we certainly encourage everyone to join for the next 3 sessions that we have left. The next one will be on Thursday at 10 a.m. This same link will get you there, and we will send out the recording for this session as well as the one we hosted last week. And please continue to spread the word and encourage others to join us as well. They can always catch up on the recordings. So we hope everyone has a great day, and thank you so much again for joining us. Take care.
Thank you, everybody.